Welcome to Lacrosse Recruiting 101, where the biggest names in lacrosse share their inside views and expertise. Now, your host, Luke Cometti.
In this episode of the podcast, we talked with John Carrol, who has recently taken over as head coach of the Nichols men's lacrosse program. And John does a great job describing how his past coaching experiences at Trinity College, Sacred Heart University, and Holy Cross University have kind of helped shape his philosophy when it comes to recruiting and how he will set up his Nichols program so that they will see success come springtime. Like always, if I miss something or there's something you'd like to see on the next show, then please email us at questions@lacrosserecruiting101.com or tweet at our Twitter handle at laxrecruit101. Thanks for listening. John Carrol, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. Appreciate you being here. I know it's a busy time of year.
No, I appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you, and I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. And when I was doing a little fact checking on your background, obviously, we've played together. I've known you a long time. I realized how hard it is to find some info about you on Google because of John Carrol University. And that got me thinking, what are the chances of you ever ending up at John Carrol University?
I feel like it might be a little self-serving, but I can't rule it out completely. In this profession, you have to be willing to look at every opportunity, even if the school is named after you. So it's
exactly.
It's a
Who
question
wouldn't want
I
to
get
play for John Carrol at John Carrol?
I know it would be quite the intro on the phone call, talking to recruits too. But like I said, it's a place that I know is an up and coming program. I would be honored to be the head coach there if that opportunity ever came about. But really happy to be at Nichols. Super excited to get started there.
Absolutely. So you did just accept the head coaching job at Nichols College this past summer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Nichols College and more specifically the men's lacrosse program there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an unbelievable opportunity that was presented to me, early in the spring. I'm definitely familiar with the school. I actually had a coach in high school who was a goalie at Nichols in the 90s. So that was kind of how I was familiar with the program first and foremost. I definitely noticed Nichols over the last couple of years making really big strides. They've just finished their third consecutive winning season since the 2017 season under Coach Gobiel, who became our athletic director, actually. So having him around as a reference as well to kind of get jump started with the program and get to know the guys and kind of the ins and outs of everyday life as a lacrosse player at Nichols, it's been a tremendous help. So, yeah, I can't speak enough about it, but it's, I got here, beginning of July. I drove down to Delaware immediately after getting hired and met with my assistant, Mac Martin, who graduated from the program. He was an attackman here until the 2018 season, and then he became the graduate assistant for us for the 2019 season, and he'll be back for 2020. Really hard worker, really glad that he's on board and kind of keeping things afloat with recruiting. We've had guys in here every day over the past month. Got more coming up this week, so things are rocking and rolling. Got a couple commits for the 2020 class. A little different timeline than my previous job at Trinity, where we're recruiting people year round, and I'm starting two or three classes at once sometimes. Very highly competitive schools, high academics. So, a lot of interest there. But Nichols, I think, is a hidden gem in New England. I think it's great for a kid who maybe isn't in that bracket financially, that is looking to, the family's looking to spend that much money to go to school or just bank on financial aid. There's a lot of good merit money opportunities and packages for kids when they're applying to school to kind of alleviate the cost of a private education in New England. So
being at Trinity for the last 7 seasons, correct?
So the bio, I think, is wrong. I was there for 4 years, long time, but not 7.
Okay, it seemed like 7.
Yeah, it felt like 7.
I was trying to do the numbers after you graduated. because I know you also were at Holy Cross and Sacred Heart.
That's right. Yes.
And obviously, you've kind of compared the recruiting differences between Trinity College and Nichols. How has that changed? Take it a step further from the Division I schools like Holy Cross and Sacred Heart.
To be honest, and to the surprise of some people, it's really not that different. The schools like Trinity and the other NESCACs are so highly competitive academically, and the jobs and the alumni networks that you're exposed to going to those institutions, on top of the lacrosse being top notch, draws a lot of kids down that path nowadays. I think I could speak to when we were getting recruited, Luke, when it was 2007, and you're trying to make the Empire team for your region. So me, it was Long Island. For you, it was Central, Syracuse. And I remember playing in the top 50 game and getting an email from Coach Reba at Wesleyan, and I was like, "What's Wesleyan? Is that like Ohio Wesleyan? Is that what is that?" I didn't even know. I had no idea. I was very ignorant to the fact that there are these amazing small liberal arts private schools in New England that have these amazing lacrosse programs. So I think it's definitely kind of known now that if you don't go Division I to that ACC, Big Ten, Ivy League, or Patriot League school, NESCAC is just as good, if not a better option for a lot of families. So
absolutely,
the recruitment process really wasn't different. And I kind of went in reverse order where I went from Division I to Division III. So for me, I thought I was going to have to change my style of recruiting, but the longer you do it and the more you recruit, it's all the same. And you just kind of figure out what the needs are for the school and admissions and what admissions office is looking for. And then you kind of partner with them and find the best fits. You want the kids you want and you have your list, but you're not trying to burn any bridges with admissions. You need them on your side, right? So you got to partner with them and you make sure that everybody's happy with who you're going after and who you're pursuing. But there really isn't much of a difference. The only difference is scholarships, and in some places like a Holy Cross or a Sacred Heart, they're not at that 12.6 number. That's the full scholarship amount that you're allowed to have for a men's lacrosse team. And there's differences in how much each school has. But and in Trinity, where it's there are no scholarships for athletes. They are their families paying for everything, or they're taking out loans to meet the cost, or they're taking out financial aid to pay for the cost. So that might be the only difference.
Similar to an Ivy League.
Correct.
Similar academics and similar style.
The NESCACs have been called small Ivy Leagues. So it is the same. It might be a little bit different, because I know Ivy Leagues have SAT-2 requirements that you have to take in certain subjects. Trinity, that wasn't the case. Trinity, just to shed some light on that, is different from some of the other NESCACs where they are test optional. So you do not have to submit your SAT or ACT scores if your GPA is at the level that the school deems, the standard. So there are some kids that get into Trinity that, their GPA is great, but their test score wasn't quite where it needed to be, but they didn't have to submit it, But if you go to Bates, Bates makes all their athletes submit their SAT and ACT scores, So it's just kind of, you really got to do your research and ask the right questions when you're going to talk to coaches at each institution and kind of figure out how their process works with admissions, because each school is going to be different based off of their needs and their processes.
Yeah, of course. Switching gears a little though, right? When you're lining up your recruiting schedule for the fall, you end up on the sideline. What is the first thing that stands out to you from a player? Right. And that could be a few things, but what are the first things you start to notice when you're starting to mark guys down?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I look for is that compete level. It's a guy who, regardless of the situation on the field, that guy's giving max effort. So it could be, for example, he's playing the wing on a face-off. The guy, his teammate who's the face-off guy, he pinches the ball, he throws it between his legs for him to go pick it up, right? Does that guy sprint all out to go get that ball and take a push? Does that guy kind of wait for his matchup to get ahead of him so he can try and lift his butt end? Does that guy just dog it completely and let that guy pick the ball up and try and ride him after the fact? There's all these different scenarios that you got to kind of be patient as a coach and an evaluator and watch and see how it all unfolds. Because there's sometimes when you're watching a kid and you're like, oh, he did this, that's so great. And then he, step 2, he does that part as well. And then step 3, he doesn't get it done. He doesn't finish the play. So it's, and then, for example, there, I'm thinking of a situation where, let's say a defender, he takes the ball away from his matchup. He picks the ball up off the ground, but then he can't leg the ball up the field to a teammate or get it out himself.
Yeah, or doesn't make the right play when he
didn't finish
right?
the play, right? Yeah, it's like the goalie who makes the great save, but he's throwing the ball over the field, and he's just a turnover machine, and he's making his life more difficult. So that's part of it as well.
And you have your specific needs, but also you probably have some, requirements in the back of your head that, hey, if this kid fits a certain mold, even if we got 10 of them, we can use 10 more.
There's no doubt.
Right?
I say this all the time. And I said it at Trinity, I've said it at Sacred Heart, anywhere where I was like heavily involved with recruiting, we're always going to look to get better. I'm never going to look at it. If there's an opportunity in front of me that I can make the team better in recruiting, I'm going to pursue it. I don't like capping myself. So some coaches will say like, oh, I want 10 guys in this class and I want 4 attackmen and I want 3 middies and, 1 goalie and a couple poles. I'll have that benchmark of what I need, and then the world we live in, right? There's constant change in everything we do, including the roster. So, there's days I come into work and, a couple guys left the team, and then a couple guys joined the team because there's guys that want to try out and walk on, and and then some older guys, maybe, me being a new coach, maybe they're like, hey, coach, it seems like you got things going in the right direction. Everyone's excited. Not for me, and that's natural with changeover and coaching staff.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to make sure that I have the best team possible. So I'm always going to pursue opportunities. If a coach reaches out to me, and says, hey, I got this guy, he's getting overlooked a little bit. He played for me on my varsity team last year and he was a contributor and he did this and he's a great kid. And I look at my list and I see that I filled my, midfield quota, let's say, the midi. And, but this coach, I trust this guy. I know him well, the coach, and he's telling me that this kid's a difference maker and that he'll help my team. I'm going to have a conversation with that young man. I'm going to see where his head's at, and I'm going to see if he is okay with the situation that he would be coming into, where maybe we took a couple more guys than he would be comfortable with, but your coach is vouching for you, and I trust him, and I've seen him, and you go watch him play, and you think he's good, and you end up taking a gamble on him. Not a gamble, but you give him a chance. And then sometimes those end up being your best players, because you gave him a shot.
Great point.
So it's I never want to close a door on anybody. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I can help you, I have a kid, I'm going to listen and kind of go from there.
That's awesome. What do you feel is the easiest position to recruit?
That's a good question.
Being a goalie yourself, is it goalie or
goalie? So I tend to think that the position you play yourself is harder to evaluate, and it's not because you don't know anything about it, but it's more like
your standards are too high,
and you have a soft spot for some kids too. You kind of feel for guys sometimes if it doesn't go their way, or you see something in their game that is a quality that you want, and you kind of latch onto that, but they don't have some of the other things you're looking for. So I'm not going to sit here and
I was always taught too, growing up, it's never the goalie's fault. Right, the defense could always play better, and that's just kind of a mentality.
Yeah.
Even though I played with some great goalies, John
that Galloway guy was
and
okay.
Steve Mal. Yeah, exactly. But there's always something defense can do better. So I imagine just when you're recruiting, that kind of comes into play.
Yeah, no, so I would say for me, I love recruiting defenders because what do you do mostly as a goalie? You're watching, right? And you're usually telling your defender how you want him to play the ball carrier. So for me, if I'm sitting there and I'm kind of pretending I'm in goal and I'm pretending I'm talking to this defender about what I want him to do and he's doing what I would say to him, and that's a hypothetical where not everyone's going to think like that, right? Like think like a player still. I'm fortunate enough that, once a year, except this year, that we usually run into each other at Lake Placid on a field and we're playing, and that's our time of year to play, right? So for me, I still have that mentality of thinking as a player, and that really helps me in my job because I'm able to kind of relate to the guys in that way where eventually down the road I won't be able to, I hope I can play until I'm 50 or so, but I don't know what it's going to do to my
the
body.
Ultra Masters up at Lake Placid.
I've been, I have my eye on it, but
Yeah.
I love recruiting defenders that are just mean, athletic. They sit in the chair, their knees are bent. They're just relentless in the matchup, and they just don't want to get beat. They don't want their guy to get by them. They want to just go to town on their arms and take the ball away and make that guy not want to dodge him again. I really like recruiting good defenders. And then even the guy who's just very technically sound, who's steady Eddie, doesn't really fall for or bite on any fakes or any hitches or any kind of shoulder dips, and just kind of moves you out of the middle and widens you out and makes you pass the ball. Like, I'm good with those guys too. You need, a little bit of both.
Make the mistake, right?
Right, exactly. Kind of make that guy panic a little bit, So I'm good with those guys too. But it's all bringing the unit together, finding one guy each that kind of matches what you're planning to do.
For sure.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Iron Horse Lacrosse, the #1 lacrosse program in Texas for travel teams, camps, and clinics. For more information on Iron Horse, visit their website at www.ironhorselax.com.
Where are your favorite places to recruit? And you can be specific on this.
But
even more from a broad standpoint, do you prefer showcases or recruiting tournaments or even prospect days, and maybe why, or why you prefer certain things for each?
Sure. So I definitely have taken a liking to the high school varsity tournaments. So, for example, like New England Lacrosse Showcase or National High School Lacrosse Showcase. Or there's one on Long Island now that my coach is going to kill me because Coach Jason Lambert was my high school coach. He runs it, NLI, National Lacrosse Invitational. So those three,
that's a popular one.
Those are great. So those are three. So National Lacrosse Invitational is at Ward Melville High School. They do 2 events, one in the fall, one in the summer. NHSLS is down in Maryland. They have started to do a fall event, and their summer event's huge. And then NELS, New England Lacrosse Showcase, is a similar type of format. It's only in the summer. But it's refreshing to go watch these guys play with their varsity teammates and coaches and kind of see where they stack up in their town. Because the club stuff is great. We all go to club events. We all have relationships with club coaches, and they're very vital and important. And club lacrosse is not going anywhere. Let's not be naive to that. But I think there is room for more varsity events with the high school teams, and I just think the coaches like watching it more because it's more realistic to college lacrosse is kind of how I'm phrasing this than going to a club tournament and watching the guys play 3 games on a Friday and then they got to wake up on Saturday and play 2 more, and then they got playoffs on Sunday, and it's like they're playing like 9 or 10 games in a weekend, and then they go play in another
back-to-back weekend.
Yeah, or then they go
summer.
on a Monday and go to a prospect day after they played a whole weekend at a tournament, and they went from the tournament in Maryland to the prospect day in Connecticut, and I'm like, oh my God, like when are you taking a break?
Walk-in, let alone.
Right. And forget 2 sport athletes if you're going to be doing that to your body doing one sport.
True.
So it's I hate to see the kids overwork themselves like that, and sometimes you need to do that because of your circumstances, but I think more times than not, if you're strategic about the events you're going to, if you have specific schools in mind and you want to go to their prospect days and you reach out to the coaches and they give you the information and you're able to get yourself at that event in front of those coaches, take maximum advantage of talking to them and ask as many questions as possible. Make sure that they evaluate you, make sure that the money you're putting forward to go to that event is well spent, and you have an answer, whether it's a yeah or a maybe, or a no, which happens. And they're not easy conversations. I can tell you that right now with the coach telling the kid, hey, I'm sorry, we're not taking you. But if the guy or the coach isn't having that conversation, sometimes that can leave the family and the kid in a tough spot. So I try to more times than not have that conversation, unless the kid decides to go somewhere else, and then it's on him to reach out and tell me. You want to keep everybody in the loop as much as possible and be as transparent as possible.
Yeah. And I love how you bring up the high school events because I've always said that, and you can get a little bit with your club team because you play with your club team a good amount. But I think of an individual showcase, right? If you're an off ball player, you're not necessarily going to have someone who's able to get you the ball. So how are you even showcasing your talent?
And if the faceoff guy on your team isn't winning any draws and you're at a showcase and you're on offense,
Yeah, exactly.
you're kind of in a tough spot. Same thing if you're a goalie on a team with a great faceoff guy, if you don't see any shots come your way, how are they evaluating you? So
or you're seeing shots from 5 yards,
or you're getting cranked on and they think you're bad, right? Yeah. So and yeah, it's tough. I give these kids and families credit. They're not gambling, but it's a risk. It's a risk. And I've heard of families with the film too. Like they'll pay for the film at an event, and then maybe their son plays half of a quarter, the whole game. Like they play the half of the first quarter, half of the second quarter, and they're a defender. And then the ball never comes down their way, and they buy this film, and they're not on it. So it's tough. I'm not gonna sit here and say this is there's one way to do the recruiting process. Definitely do your research and your homework and ask appropriate questions because a lot of money is spent, whether you land at a school or whether you end up not landing at a school for lacrosse. You spend a lot of money either way. So make sure you're kind of doing your due diligence and following up with people and doing your homework because the more informed you are, the better decisions you can make. And you're not blindsided in these meetings when coaches invite you to campus.
How often do you look at highlight films?
All the time. It's a good barometer to kind of give us a snapshot of who they are as a player and what their strengths are. I can tell you right now, if they don't have film, I can't do much unless I've seen them play live. Or if I have a buddy who is their coach and it's like, this guy is the man, you have to go watch him play, because it's you're guessing. You're kind of just looking at, a piece of paper with their height and weight and their birthday and their high school. And, you don't have anything to kind of evaluate and kind of see, yeah, I would check him out or maybe in a little while, maybe send me another one, see how you're progressing or no. But the highlight tape is crucial. I know there's kind of there's a debate, I guess, whether it's worth it or not. I think it is worth it, but I don't think more highlight tapes than not don't land kids scholarships. That's the way I'm going to put it. So if you have a great highlight, don't expect to be offered a scholarship, but do expect interest, and then you got to do your part from there. The kids who kind of land those spots off of the highlights might apply a little bit more to the quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, non-traditional areas, right? Because they're not maybe able to get to the East as much, and the non-traditional market thing. I'm not really. Texas is huge now. California is huge now. I expect to go to those places, so I don't like calling them non-traditional. But people are going to say what they label it. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely changed, but it's been interesting.
Yeah, and it seems that highlight films, they can show you a lot, but they also leave out a lot, right? You have no idea the competition they're playing against.
Yeah.
You have no idea what else happened in that game. You have no idea if they had 6 turnovers before they scored that goal.
And also, to your point, how did they react to a bad play? Did they put their head down? Did they slam a stick? These little things, right? So I know coaches out there want to watch an entire game and literally just stare at that one kid they're evaluating and see everything that they do, whether they're playing or not playing, which is one way to do it. If you're like really super focused on one kid as a coaching staff, I think that's appropriate. But if you did that for every recruit, I don't know if you're going to finish your class.
True.
Like I said, that's one way to do it. The highlight's crucial. If you have a highlight, that gives you a better chance of moving on to the next step, which is, hey, where are you going to play? Or, hey, we've seen you play. We like your highlights. Do you want to come to prospect day? Or, hey, we've seen you play. We like your highlights. Do you want to come to campus to visit? So look at it as a vehicle to the next step. That's how I would phrase it. Don't look at it as like, I need this highlight to be great or I'm not going to get recruited. The highlight is there to open the door for you to walk through it.
So now being the head coach of Nichols College, and you've had different experience, playing, from Long Island, playing at University at Albany, coaching Sacred Heart, Holy Cross, Trinity. Now you have your own program. How do you anticipate, the Bison style of play will be come this spring? and it's going to be from an offensive and defensive standpoint. But
Sure.
how do you think you guys will show up this spring?
Sure. So I don't want to give too much away. I think we're gonna play different. I watched all the games from last year. Shortly after I got hired, I just went to town and watched. Every night I put a game on and kind of evaluate. And it was cool to kind of watch the progression from game one to the last game. All the way up until Curry and the strides that we took as a team. You could see the improvement as we went along. And you could kind of see the early season, like, oh man, it's February lacrosse kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to play.
Cold.
Yeah, cold. Oh man, if you don't like cold, don't go to school in New England. Just FYI. But yeah, I think we're gonna play different in the sense that in the past we've been more of not a freelance, but more of an open offensive team that it's similar to an Albany or a Syracuse, where it's like, hey, we get the ball, we're on out, we're going to the net.
Yeah.
I think that we have some very good players, but I don't want to play that fast and loose style just yet. I kind of want to take advantage of the clock. I want to be more in that clock management, ball possession, taking advantage of possessions and getting our personnel on the field before we choose to attack the goal. Is that the most exciting way to play in 2019 going on 2020? Probably not.
No.
But I think that, and we lived it playing at Albany. If you don't have a face-off guy that can get you the ball a lot, and you're a team that, like, as soon as the long pole gets the ball and you're considering yourself on offense, you better be able to score goals because you're going to have to win 17, 16, 18, 17. You're going to have to be able to go goal for goal with these teams. And the way that we played last year, when we would go play against some better teams that played that style, I didn't really like the result. So I want to kind of take back control a little bit of the game and manage it a little bit more on offense. So we got some dudes that I want to put the ball in their stick, and I want to kind of let the clock go down a little and then set up and go. And then take advantage of the time that's remaining and put some pressure on the defense that way. And then take advantage of transition and understand if we have transition, go, but then also understanding when it's not there anymore and it's a clear cut, even situation that we save the possession, we get the ball behind, we spin it, and then we set up and go. Defensively, we were more of a zone team, which a lot of schools are going that route nowadays. And even recruiting personnel to run the zone, like Wesleyan, where they have these huge guys that are like, it's like trying to throw the ball through the forest, so to speak. They're so long and rangy, and then you put a pole in their hands. If they put their stick up in a lane, you're trying to skip it through from one corner to the other. It's really hard to connect if you're not really on with your timing, So
yeah.
I'm trying to kind of go back to more of a man-to-man style defense, get out there and pressure guys that have the ball, and slide early, and help early and give confidence to the on-ball defenders that are on islands. Like, hey, you get beat, we got help for you coming. Don't worry about it. Just be aggressive. Go play that guy. Keep him out of the middle. If he gets a step on you, we'll slide and you can recover and we'll go from there.
Well, John, great info, the whole time on here. And to kind of wrap things up, let's say you found, you're on the sideline, you found your guy. Right, someone that'd be a great fit for the school, the team, and would probably be an impact player right away. What are your biggest selling points at Nichols College? Things that you guys can offer that you're not going to find at every college or every college lacrosse program.
It's a great question. I think at Nichols, you're going to find a small, tight-knit community of people from the administration to the athletic department that are just willing to help in any way possible. I'm amazed with the infrastructure and support that the kids have here. Anything that they kind of need as far as it being academics or advising. The Career Professional Development Center has, they actually have suits and for men and women, if they don't have the proper attire for an interview, they can go to the Career Professional Development Center and get a suit fitted for them for their interview that day. And they don't have to leave campus to do it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. I was like, that is amazing. I wish I had something like that to help me when I was at Albany, but would have got some better job offers, I guess. But no, it's that's just one part of it. The athletic department here is top notch. Our facilities are some of the best in Division III. I don't think it'll be hard to find one that not a lot of schools have the facilities that we have. Our field house is full size. Our weight room is connected right to it. My office is right outside of it, so I can see the guys working out all the time. They can play wall ball in there. There's racquetball courts that they can go. There's 2 of them actually that the team goes in there and plays wall ball together. Our turf field's brand new. They just installed it last year. There's a lot of good things going on.
Awesome, man. Great selling points. And we look forward to see how you guys do this spring. Coach John Carrol, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Really appreciate it.
Obviously, best of luck, in your first head coaching position.
Really appreciate it, Luke. Thank you for the time.
Thanks for listening to Lacrosse Recruiting 101. Catch us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a question for Luke? Email them to questions@lacrosserecruiting101.com.